That's how I'm going to start it. Just me sighing. So this will be a pretty much unexpected addition for the housebound. For those of us that are now quarantined, being kept in. We've been grounded. That's what I think they should call it. They should call it grounding.
You're a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've been naughty. I've been grounded. So we're going to do a podcast. I've got AJ Charlton Aaron's with me.
Hey, man.
How you doing? And he's traversed the terrifying journey to get here.
It's been lovely. No one's on the roads.
No one's on the roads. No traffic. You're certainly not going to catch any road rage at the moment.
No, not at all. It's been great.
And what we thought we would do is, rather than just kind of have a meandering conversation that we could do and end up in a lot of trouble, we would probably construct something a little bit more rigid so that we can not get in trouble.
Yeah, and hopefully prevent going on tangents every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not promising.
Yeah.
Not promising anything. I think we've gone on 3 tangents in just doing the sound check for doing this.
Yeah, so. Exactly, yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to sort of reel off 5 photographers that influence each of us. So I've got 5, you've got 5. You've picked from quite a broad genre range, am I right?
Yes.
So you've got like landscape and portrait.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got some street, surprisingly a car one.
Okay, that is surprising.
Very weird for me.
Yeah.
And then a wedding and 2 portrait. So I've gone quite. I made fun of you for going quite broad, and I've just realised how broad I've gone. But I'll tell you what. How about you get the ball rolling here? Who's your first one?
They're not in any particular order.
No.
It's the order is how quickly I could remember or find them. Sean Archer is my first one.
Sean Archer, the Russian
photographer. Who shoots on Olympus.
I didn't know that. I did not know he shot on Olympus.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that really common knowledge? Am I being stupid?
Well, I think it's quite common.
Oh, okay.
I just thought it's more because not many people. Well, Instagram, everyone seems to be shooting on Sony.
Yeah. Pricks.
Yeah. So it's just quite nice to see someone shooting on a camera that seems to be, well, a brand that seems to be of a yesteryear.
Yep.
And I just think he's fantastic the way he captures.
Quite a retro brand, and he doesn't shoot retro stuff, which is kind of unusual as well.
Yeah,
Fuji people tend to shoot Fuji for sort of photos, and
yeah,
you know what I mean. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, he's very, very female heavy in his portfolio, but just the way he captures natural light, and his editing on skin, I think it's great.
Have you ever seen Irene Rudnick's video where she attempts to?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think that's a sign of knowing you're very good, is that everyone's trying to mimic your style.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. He has access to some fantastic models as well.
I don't know where these women are.
No, he lives in a very unusual place.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like downtown Basingstoke is where he's finding his models.
I'm off to Russia, I think.
It didn't take long for us to hit a tangent and offend a load of people.
Yeah.
How long have you been a fan? Like, is it recent?
It's got to be a few years. I found him on Flickr, and then I follow him on Instagram as well. I'd love to go on one of his workshops. I don't know if he's ever going to do one in the UK, but if he does, I'd be all over that. But just he's very simple style, and it's consistent.
Yeah,
with just nice natural light. It's not too heavily edited either.
Have you ever seen, I'm going to butcher this, I've butchered this before, but I think it's Georgi Chenyajev. Oh, fucking hell.
That's brilliant.
Georgi Chenyajev. I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. So he's very similar in the sort of color and lighting and model choice as Sean Archer, but he does these sort of 16:9, almost like widescreen ratio.
Oh, okay.
35mm portraits with a lot of environmental stuff going on. So it's kind of like Sean Archer, but cinematic.
Yeah.
Definitely worth checking out as well. I'll put a link to what his stuff is in the description on YouTube, because I guarantee no one can find him by my pronunciation of his name. He couldn't find himself.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I'll.
Yeah, go on.
You happy to?
Yeah, no. All I say is, I mean, the reason why he mainly inspires me is he's working with very basic setups.
Yeah.
And just the way he captures expression, like even with the images that aren't, he works up to implied, but even when you're not working on that level, just the expression he captures from people, I just think's fantastic.
Very consistent as well. You know his photos when you see them.
Yeah.
Which is,
there's an elegance to his work. Which I really like.
Yeah. And he's not sort of like wildly swinging with loads of different lighting setups and loads of different set pieces and stuff. You know a Sean Archer image when you see one. It's not his name either, by the way.
No.
He took that from, I think, like Bravo 20 or something. He took it from like a really bizarre place.
Yeah, Sean Archer doesn't scream as a Russian name.
No, you can't even set up a Russian accent and make it sound good.
Go on, what's your one?
So my first one's a guy I found on YouTube doing film photography and shots with a Fuji while he was traveling from like northeast USA down to southwest, and I think he ends up in Mexico. But basically doing a lot of Route 66, abandoned buildings, and sort of showing the off the beaten track America. A Canadian guy called Karl McDougall, which is just the best name, Kyle McDougall. I love him because he looks like a Canadian. He's like 19 foot tall. He's got big hairy arms. He's got that amazing Canadian accent where he just sounds like he'll do anything. He's just a nice guy.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, he's the kind of guy to help you move. I wouldn't want anything back. But he shoots a lot of, I think, like medium and large format film. As well as he does reviews on film cameras on YouTube, and he shoots digitally with I think an X100V or an X100F, which is the fixed lens Fuji. His composition is amazing. He shoots in a lot of very bad light and produces really cool stuff because he really seems to know what he's doing geometrically with like shadows. And I wouldn't say his stuff is obviously complex. When you look at his work, it's not like you couldn't work out how he's done what he's done, but it's just, I don't think many people would find themselves getting to where he took the photo from. I think he finds a lot of unusual compositions. His YouTube channel is absolutely brilliant. It's not overhyped American people screaming into a microphone about you should buy their presets or anything like that. He's very calm. He makes it fun, inspiring, and he looks like he genuinely enjoys his photography. He's not trying to sell you something. And I just followed his YouTube for quite a while, but then I found his Instagram, realizing that there's a lot of people that I follow on YouTube, but I don't follow on Instagram. I don't follow on other mediums. It's kind of stupid when you like their photography, but you don't follow their photography account. And I kind of realized I was being a bit of a twat. So I started following him recently, and I have to say, especially for the 3291 project, which I was doing, it kept me really, really interested and gave me loads of ideas on what to do in bad light. So it's Kyle McDougall. Definitely check him out, at least on YouTube, and maybe be a bit smarter than me, and also on Instagram. So who's your next?
Next one's also a Russian.
All right, this is getting a bit weird.
Yeah.
Who's your next one, Gordon?
It is Elena. Have a go at the surname. Shumalova.
Shumalova?
Shumalova. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Shumilova. She photographs primarily, her family. And it's just the way she captures the kids playing with the dog.
Right.
And just the light is incredible.
Yeah.
She's on a Canon, if anyone cares about. I think it's a 5D Mark III is her main body she uses. But just the way she captures light and, again, expression.
Yeah.
I think it's mainly her own family she photographs, and occasionally it's a few other families. And again, I found her on Flickr, and I now follow her on
You're that Instagram. One guy that's still on Flickr.
I think I'm the only one using Flickr. Yahoo's going to reach out to me. He's like, please don't stop.
You're the biggest fan.
Yeah. It's scary if it's just me.
Yeah,
holding the fort.
So like candid stuff.
Yeah,
doesn't do any professional stuff, or
no, I don't. Well, not to my knowledge.
Right.
All of it's very candid and doesn't look staged, but some great like leading lines. Great use of the rule of thirds, but the way she captures light, it's all very. You got a lot of low sun,
right?
Golden hour shots.
She's picking the right moments.
Yeah, but the way she's capturing the expression with the kids playing with each other and interacting with the dog. There's somewhere they're interacting with the ducks on a farm.
Okay,
and you just think these are stunning photographs.
I have a controversial statement.
Go for it.
I think women generally are much better at photographing candid moments. I think they're able to insert themselves in them in a much more subtle way.
Yeah. But it's true. And when I talk to female photographers, they're much more interested in expression and that interaction, where blokes generally want to know what lens they're on, what's the aperture,
technical
what's
stuff.
the settings. Yeah.
Women are for people, men are for things kind of thing.
Yeah. That's just based on my experience.
Yeah.
I don't think many people would disagree with that.
No. I'm sure someone would, because
it's the internet.
Yeah. Everything's controversial.
Yeah, but she's an absolutely phenomenal photographer. It's really, really cool.
Oh, cool. Man. I have to check her out. I've never heard the name at all. So
yeah, I've butchered it. Probably,
Shumalova.
Yeah.
I came in and saved you. Don't worry about it.
Cheers, man. What's your number 2?
So I think I'm going to be really offensive here and not know where she's from.
Brilliant.
We have spoken. She is based in England, and she has said she'd come on the podcast, but there's a lot of people that have said they're going to come on the podcast.
Hey.
It's more a case of, when you see someone, you're out at like B&Q and you got to pick some stuff up, like some paint or whatever.
Yeah.
And you see that guy you haven't seen for a while and you're like, oh, how you been? You good? Oh, we'll have to have a drink soon.
Yeah. Meanwhile, it's national crisis. I'm like, hey, Kris.
Yeah, you come round.
There's nothing going on.
Yeah, you illegally come round. So this is Olga Gradina.
Okay.
And she is probably the best amalgamation of Emily Soto and Agatha Serge, who are my 2 favorite photographers. She's got a very healthy following on Instagram, but she has the scope to be a lot bigger than what she is in terms of following. And I think she should be doing big campaigns and photographing big names. Her work is like very, very beautiful, natural light, very narrow depth of field in a lot of cases, but with tons and tons of texture to the image. Like they're very tactile images. There's a lot of like freckles are a big part of it, which is a big Agatha Serge thing. There's a couple of things she's fantastic with. I think she's fantastic at having like a tactile, tangible image where like you want it printed, and it's rare to see something digitally and want to see it printed.
Yeah.
That's why so few people print. I'd love to have a couple of her prints to have on the wall here because I think her work is beautiful. She's also amazing with color. Just fantastic at working with naturally found colors and working them into a scene.
And just picking them out and drawing attention to them.
Yeah, and just sort of finding the right styling to fit what could be seen as maybe a boring scene. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Or a lot of people would mistake it for a boring scene, and she finds a way of using the styling and the model and the model's hair color and so on to really bring it to life. I'm a big fan at the moment. I'm on a huge black and white kick where like everything I'm interested in is black and white, and she's like the one exception. I'm always happy to see some of her work in portraiture. If you're a fan of like Bella Kotak or Irene Rudnick or there's a few others, I think she really fits in well. I just think she's Emily Soto and Agatha Serge had a baby and it's her.
Right.
And if anyone's a fan of like really nice feminine portraiture that's not sexualized, then that's the way to go. I think she's, and I tell you one other thing she does, which I always find really attractive with photographers.
Yeah.
When they find that middle ground between portrait and fashion, where it's a portrait and it's of the person, but there's a real stylistic element to it.
Yeah, they've thought about it. They've considered what they're doing.
Yeah, as opposed to it being like a girl in ripped jeans sat on the floor wearing glasses, that makes a lot of people on Instagram wet themselves. I think she's actually got a fantastically considered approach in that sense.
What's her colour palette like? Is it more of does it lean towards like a classic film?
Autumnal. Right. Very autumnal, very, very like golden and orange. But when she uses green, it's really stark in contrast to everything else in the scene. But she really works. I mean, off the top of my head, I'm thinking of a lot of images with like redhead models or pale models. And then the color just injects so much fire. And, there are images that just don't work as a black and white.
Yeah.
And a lot of people make that mistake because they just think black and white just universally works. But in some scenes, it kills it.
Yeah.
I've tried with her images a few times. I've put them in Photoshop to just see what black and white. Because Agatha Serge is very black and white.
Yeah.
and it takes so much away. It's her color work that makes her photos. It's unbelievable.
But you think about that when you're shooting. Like when I set up a shot, I'm immediately looking at the colors and going, "This looks really good. I'll keep it."
Right.
Or I'm looking at the light and going, "The light is so dramatic. I love it. I'm going to highlight that in black and white without the distraction of color." So clearly, she's thinking very well.
You can blow highlights in color, and it's a lot more forgiving than in black and white.
Yes,
I think.
Yeah, I think
and natural light, that's going to happen quite a bit.
Yeah.
I just need her to come on the podcast for a while, which I don't think she'll do now. She's too big, and now I'm blowing smoke up her ass. But yeah, absolutely worth following at bare minimum on Instagram.
Yeah, no, I'll have to give her a look.
Yeah, that's my next pick.
Cool. Right, over to me. I've got Anara.
Did you pick any ones that you could pronounce?
No. My dyslexia is kicking in.
Right.
This one, they're Icelandic. Anara Kristijensen. Yeah, a really good landscape photographer.
Yep.
Based in Iceland, of course. So the landscapes out there are to die for.
Yep.
But the way they capture sort of an otherworldly feel, because loads of photographers have been and shot all over Iceland.
Yeah.
I just think their work really stands out. And again, the way they capture textures, colours, and greys as well. There's a lot of grey in certain points of Iceland.
Yeah.
And just makes it look so eerie in some photographs, but beautiful.
It's kind of an alien planet unto itself, isn't it?
Yeah, but loads of great films are shot there to make it look otherworldly. Like loads of sci-fi.
Prometheus was there.
Yeah, Interstellar was shot there.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, the when they land on the planet with it's just water.
Yep,
that was shot there.
It's got some good credits. Its IMDb is healthy.
Yeah. But no, as a photographer, Nara's just absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
For the landscapes, and it's lovely 16:9 crops, and just the composition of making things look interesting.
One thing I find with Iceland, and please feel free to jump down my throat on this, but is it like you say, a lot of people go there, and it's now very in fashion.
Yeah.
And I've seen
like it's more on the internet now than it was, 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
I've seen a lot of posts about trying to conserve it a little bit from the amount of people that are going over there, because obviously it's about 300,000 people that live there, and I think they probably double that in tourism.
Yeah.
Do you think? Okay, so firstly, do you think Iceland's a bit played out? And secondly, is that more impressive that this person's work stands out so much? I'm not going to attempt to say their name.
Yes. So the first question was, do I think it's too
played out?
Too played out. A little bit, but then you do that with a lot of things. How many? But then you could say that about photographers that are shooting, near a window with some natural light to copy Sean Archer, or like you said, ripped jeans and some glasses and a white shirt.
Yeah,
it's a lot of things that are overused. So I think it's then, to go into your second question, credit to this person as a photographer to be photographing somewhere where it's heavily photographed and still making their work stand out.
Yeah.
So I still think people should go to Iceland and do it. And it's just a credit to their ability to say, hey, look, I'm shooting where there's thousands of other photographs here, but mine are really standing out, and they're looking, they're still looking tasteful. Yeah. I think that's where we've got to, where people are trying to capture things in a new way, which I don't think's wrong, but just because it's new and different doesn't necessarily mean it's good. There's a great video about Grand Canyon and how everyone shoots at certain points all the time. And I remember finding another video how they're making, how you achieve these new shots of the Grand Canyon. I can't describe the technique they did, but I looked at it and went, but it's not that pleasing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's different.
Yeah, it's different. And that's what we want to do.
Cat food and bananas for dinner is different.
It is different.
Probably not going to be great.
I'll take your word for it.
It's a very lean time at the moment, okay? You eat whatever you can.
Yeah, we're going to be rationing those things. That'll be a delicacy in a few weeks and we can't get any bananas imported.
Everyone's just going to be eating the toilet roll that they've ordered with some dry pasta.
Yeah.
That'll be the new delicacy.
That's enough from me. Go on. Over to you.
So my weird one is an Instagram page I found when I started the 3291 project, and I was looking for I have a real love for old America.
Yep.
Now there are a million jokes people can make about that, but don't.
Okay.
But I have a real love for old America, that kind of like old 50s, 60s, 70s. Like I just love the sort of how much culturally America led the way in those years.
Oh yeah, and it's very iconic.
Exactly. And I think, everything from the cityscapes to the fashion in America at the time has always been fantastic. But I think the real golden age was like 40s to 70s.
Yeah.
Culturally, I just think is, to me, the most interesting. And one of the few things in this world that I have no interest in being photographed is cars. I don't care about cars at all. I come from a family that the men know how to work on a car. And if you don't, you're a woman. So I'm a woman. But I have no interest in cars overall. However, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s American cars, before we had to make them safe and ugly, I think they were just the most stunningly beautiful designs. And there's a photographer called Paul Mckenzie, but on Instagram, he's Pauls_motos.
Right.
And I think he's San Francisco based, or at least a lot of his work seems to be San Francisco based. And basically he just absorbs when he sees classic cars, old Americana, and he photographs them. And the compositions are sometimes obviously very much caused by where the car's been left.
Yeah.
And maybe he can't get a good photo because next to it is a Prius or whatever. And he has to photograph it in certain ways, but he does like really nice detail shots. He does bizarre compositions. He does some pretty much straight up compositions. But there is something about natural light photography, especially when it has a filmic look to it, and that era of car. To me, it's not really describable other than I just think they did it better then. I just think they had a better idea of design and what was more visually stimulating than we do now. I think now everything is just purpose. Buildings are just squares and they're there to serve a purpose.
There's no character to them.
No, everything's
That's
minimalist.
That's why Victorian houses in the UK are still quite aesthetically pleasing.
Exactly.
But you can look at some, council estate building blocks, and it is. I can't remember from what era would it have been. Would it have been the 80s, where it was just all grey and brown, and just everything was dead straight, and it's quite an eyesore.
No one's going to be looking back in 50 years and going, those council buildings in the 80s in Birmingham were beautiful. Right? They're never going to do that. But I think at the time that America, like at the heyday of the Mustang, 67 Mustang, everybody knew how good that looked. Same as Z-type Jag. Everyone knew how good that looked.
Yeah.
And it hasn't changed. It's just gotten better.
Yeah.
Whereas, I don't think over time we're going to be looking at the Nissan Juke and going, do you know what? People missed the
or the Toyota Prius.
Or the Toyota Prius, which people bought for thousands and will soon be illegal. But I think it's like, you're not going to look back at those cars and go, oh, people really missed how beautiful they were at the time. People are going to see them for what they are, which is just function.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas form was a big part of the old days. Anyway, so Paul's Motos is probably my favorite account on Instagram outside of portrait and wedding stuff.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre because I don't like cars.
Yeah, surprising. But I take it he's based on the West Coast.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's San Francisco, which I also find really interesting because San Francisco is a really hard place to park.
Yeah.
So I imagine the cars when they're parked there, that's it. That's where they're staying.
Yeah, yeah. But what's interesting though on that point is from what we went to Vegas last year. And that's my
we went to Vegas. Should we tangent?
Well, no, but it's like the first time I'd been that far across the world, and there was such a difference in the light there than there was anywhere on the East Coast. I've done loads of the East Coast.
Yeah.
And that kind of sets that setting. Like if you got some of those American cars from that era and put them in London, they just look so bizarre.
Yeah.
It just look out of place. But if you've got like a classic Triumph bike or an old Aston Martin in around London, it's sort of, you go, that makes sense.
It's weird how a car can have a culture.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe that ties into how he's capturing them.
It's like, have you ever seen a New York taxi outside of New York, like at like a car show or anything?
It looks like it's like a parody or like you've gone to Disney World and it's all fake.
And it's the same with like a black cab. When you see a black cab in America, I've seen a couple of black caps in America. I'm like, what the fuck is that doing there? This is just wrong, and God is angry.
Yeah. I can't remember where I was, but I saw a red phone box once in the States that someone's clearly shipped over, and I've gone, what's that doing here?
Yeah, it's just
it's like, what?
Yeah, it doesn't feel real, and it feels someone kidnapped a phone box. It's kind of weird, right?
Does the Queen know about this?
Yeah. Okay, so there's really going on a tangent now, but there's a hilariously awful film. Absolutely worth watching. It's one of the worst films ever made. I had
I'm on the edge of my seat. Go on, tell me.
So I think its opening weekend in the cinema was so poor that they can tell you how much it made down to the dollar. So it's like $2,312.
Wow.
And it's a John Travolta film. And it was directed by Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And John Travolta plays I don't know the vernacular, but I'm going to say mentally disabled character.
Okay.
Who is obsessed with a movie star that's fictional in the film. And I think John Travolta's first line in the movie is like, you've got to be quick because I've got to poop. Like, it's so tastefully awful. Like, it's missed the mark.
What's it called?
The Fanatic.
The Fanatic, right.
I would absolutely shout out Your Movie Sucks for doing a watch, like a commentary where they watched it and made fun of it.
Oh, okay.
It's worth watching for that. Chris Stuckman did a pretty good hilariosity review on it.
Yes.
As annoying as Chris Stuckman is.
Yeah.
But definitely have a look, because it's even got a scene in it. But bear in mind, I just want to reiterate, it was directed by Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
Where one of the characters talks about how Limp Bizkit is the best band ever and makes his kid listen to him. It's so bad.
A bit of product placement.
So the point I'm getting to is that John Travolta basically makes his money by dressing up as a character and hanging around on Hollywood Boulevard and taking pictures with tourists.
Okay.
And he dresses up as a London policeman, and he tries to do so in this film.
Don't tell me he tries to do a British accent.
No. But no, there's layers to this.
Okay.
He tries to do a British accent while he's trying to portray a mentally disabled person. It's just a work of art. But the point is, to see a British police uniform outside of England, to me, always looks stupid.
Yeah.
And an American one outside of America looks like a stripper's uniform.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know how something that isn't a person can belong somewhere.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? But I think, from back to Vegas quick, I think just looking at the light, I was seeing how the sun hits everything there in Vegas with all the red rocks around it from the iron. I've not been to San Francisco. I know you have, but just the way the light hits and captures that part of the world.
San Francisco gets good light.
Yeah,
there is no doubt it gets good light.
It sort of falls into how things were captured at the time.
Yes,
and then that sort of ties into
the
way you expect
that
to see
anywhere
them.
else. Yeah,
it's how you expect to see it in that light.
Yeah,
and that light is only achievable arguably there.
Exactly, and it's like if you try and photograph, parts of the Emirates or the Middle East, but it was overcast, it just wouldn't make sense.
Man.
It's just, I know what you mean. It's almost like there's intangibles built into the culture of something, like the light, which you can't move, you can't control it. It's an orb in, it's thousands and millions of miles away. It's weird how there's all these intangibles that make up something that ends up being an Instagram page that makes me actually like cars.
Yeah. So now have we solved that mystery about why you like cars as a person who doesn't give a shit about cars?
Someone needs to buy me a Mustang before they're illegal. Okay, so who's your next one?
Okay, Fabio Antora.
I'm positive you're doing this on purpose.
I am. I've got
you had like David Smith, and you were like, "Fuck that guy."
Yeah. I like how I said it like it was a question. Antora?
Yeah. Well, I thought you were going to try and do that thing where people put on the accent. Where like you'll get an English person who goes to private school, or they went to private school. Yeah. They now work in like, the financial district.
Yeah.
And they go out for fajitas.
Yeah.
And and it's like, why did you put the accent on for one word?
Can I get the croissant?
Yeah, exactly.
And a flat white.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So go on, tell me about.
Fabio is another landscape photographer.
Yep.
And he does more time-lapse photography compared to Anara, who I mentioned previously.
Explain time-lapse photography to me.
So he'll have a tripod set up somewhere, long exposure, and that way you capture. There's a lot of star trail photography and long exposure for sunsets,
right?
And get that nice smooth waves on the ocean shore.
Yeah.
Again, done a lot. Not all of it is to my taste, but the way this guy captures the light and the composition, I just think actually this is really, really nice.
Well, the really, really, really long exposure stuff is quite often done to spice up a shit photo.
Yes.
Whereas, like, if you have a good photo and then you add it in, it's icing.
Not all of his ones are to my taste per se, but the majority of his work, I just go, that's a stunning photograph. I'm just reminding myself of some of the ones I really like, and he's done a lot with the Northern Lights.
Okay.
Which I've never photographed. You got to be in the right place to capture it. And again, many people have done these techniques, but the majority of his work just really stands out to me.
Yeah.
I'm not a massive fan of like really wide focal lengths, so like 20 or 16 mil.
Yeah.
And you've got all these waves coming towards you, and there's something dead center in the foreground at the back. Because it's been done a lot.
Yeah.
But the way he compositions a lot of the landscapes, especially when he's done stuff with mountains and he's high up, with a time-lapse photograph, it's just stunning.
Is it tied to the fact that you like your hiking and whatnot?
Yeah. I do have a soft spot for landscape photography, even though I don't really do a lot. I don't do any professionally. I just do portraits and weddings. But seeing other people doing that gets me wanting to go out and do more landscape stuff.
Yeah. I
prefer that over cityscape. I did some lovely ones in New York last year when I was out there, and I really enjoyed that. It's more the mountains and stuff that I would rather photograph than cities.
So you see a lot more landscape photography than I do because it's in your wheelhouse a bit more than I don't seek it out as much as what you do. On the like. How bad is the unoriginality of landscape photography at the moment in terms of like people doing the same, like you say, the minimalist, something in the middle?
Yeah, so we've gone through a phase of when time lapse sort of became really became really easy to achieve.
Yeah,
we've been technology caught up. Then we had loads of like light trail photography.
Yeah,
and then we've gone a big push, especially with like the Sony Alpha range with capturing stars.
Don't look at my Sonys and then say something like that. That was so spiteful the way you did that. You like looked at the camera like you were going to spit on it.
I want one secretly. And they've captured loads of starlight photography. Yeah. At the moment, I'd say there's a big trend of having someone hiking. It looks a little bit too staged.
Yeah.
That said, I don't mind people in a landscape photograph because it gives it comparison for scale.
Yeah.
Like if you've got something in the foreground that you can immediately recognize to give you a proportion to how big something is. Trees don't work because trees can be anything from 5 feet to 30 feet. Mm-hmm. But when you've got a house somewhere hidden or a person, you can point to it as reference and you go, oh shit. Then you suddenly realize how big and small everything is.
Yep.
I've got a lot of time for that. But when it's clearly branded stuff and they're
time for a tangent.
Go on.
I'm really not a fan of like the non-diegetic version of that, which is where you plant someone.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of that because I think it's like when you watch a movie and out of nowhere a character will bring up some really bizarre piece of information that you like, oh, that's just foreshadowing, that's coming up later on.
Yeah.
So when it comes up later on, it just feels like a checklist. It feels like when you just kind of enforce someone into a landscape photograph and they don't really seem to have a purpose other than to be a person it
needs to be quite subtle about the way you implement that thing.
There's a shot I think by Tom Heaton when he wasn't just walking past the camera that he just set up so that he could look like he was hiking somewhere. There was a shot he did on a snowy mountain that had 3 people hiking and they were fucking miles away.
Right, yeah.
And in the picture, they are about 6 combined pixels.
Yeah.
But like you say, it makes you realize the sheer scale of something and it adds to the minimalist nature of the shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're doing something that they were meant to be doing in the photo. That's when I find it interesting.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
There's a lot of people doing like, oh, we need something for scale. Dave, go stand over there. And Dave's just looks like...
Yeah, and
he's got nothing else going on.
And there's a lot of that on Instagram of people hiking and doing lots of posing and stuff. And that's what some people like, but it's not my personal taste. The way you've described it is exactly it. It's there for comparison of scale.
Yeah. But I just like it when it's diegetic, when it feels like there's a reason.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Just something to me. I mean, I'm definitely no aficionado with landscapes. I tend to go once a year to go and do something remotely landscapey, fail miserably. It sits on a hard drive for 2 years. I pull it out and I'm like, it was as bad as I thought it was.
It's hard though, man. Like I was up Snowdon 2 weeks ago before Corona got all shut down. And the week leading up to was great. Loads of snowfall on the mountain, a bit of heavy wind, no sign of rain. The day we get there, it pisses it down.
Yeah.
So the first half of the day's fine. But once we're about a third of the way up, it's just constant rain and cloud. I've got a group photo of me and my mates up, but I was really hoping to get some cool landscape photography because I like my mountains with a bit of snow on.
Yep.
And I was gutted. And you're looking at photographs on Instagram and a few Facebook groups where people are often up there to give you accurate representation of what's actually going on in the mountain.
Yeah.
But it looks like I was so psyched up. And then you get there. So that's the other thing I always give landscape photographers a bit of credit for because it's a patience game. Yes, it's a bit of luck, but there's some photographers who I do follow who base themselves in Snowdonia in the Lake District or some of the Isle of Skye.
Yep.
And the same with Anara, who's based in Iceland. I don't know how close they are to their points, but you're in that environment so you can go, oh, the weather's good today. I can now go capture what I want.
It shows the stones on
on
landscape photographers from 100 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Like
some of the shots done on film, and you think that shit was heavy. Like carrying
you
all
had
that
to log that up there.
There's no carbon fiber tripod back then,
right? And you had no app.
Yeah.
To check what was going on. You were probably going to die of exposure by the time you were 34.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like there were so many.
And then your film got wet, and you're like, oh.
Exactly. Like you could do all of that and then just accidentally expose the film.
Yeah.
Like there was so many problems. Yeah. I know. So I think if you can think of anything, it's happened once.
Yeah.
Right. It's a very, very poorly thought out theory. But I believe if you can think of a scenario, it's probably at least happened once.
Yeah.
Which means I believe someone back in the days of like wet plate or large format landscape photography, when that was the only option, has hiked an entire mountain and realised they've left something they need to take the picture with at the bottom.
Probably just jump off at that point.
Mate, at that point, you just kind of sit there and turn to stone, didn't you?
Yeah.
You're done. Okay.
It's like I've had enough of a tangent. Go on, back to you.
I'm going to go for 2 in a row here.
Oh.
And the reason is because I want you to finish. I realised as we've started this order.
I like the way you looked at me then you said that.
But I've kind of set myself up to main event this list and I don't really want to. Okay, so my first one is when I switched over to Fuji, something that I always do when I'm looking at a new piece of gear or a new place I'm going to go to or whatever, is I follow a hashtag. On Instagram, so that you start to just get a sort of a general feel of it.
And see what people are doing with the gear or at the location for a bit of inspiration.
And for the most part, it's wank, and you see a lot of terrible stuff, and it almost puts me off of buying certain things or whatever. But anyway, so when I looked at Fuji and I was sort of looking at their medium formats potentially for portraits and whatnot, so I followed the hashtag for the GFX 50R. Or 50S, whichever. And a photographer came up that I'd never seen before, and I can't imagine how I hadn't seen him before. It's a guy called Phil Sharp.
Okay.
English-based, a lot easier to say than all of your ones, so and he does a lot of like headshot sessions, a lot of fairly basic portraiture, but in a really considered way. Really takes advantage of medium format, like really gives you that lovely depth of field, shoots slightly wider than most people I think would with portraits. Kind of people get so hung up on the technicalities of portraits that they don't realize that character is not a bad thing. So lenses that may not be perfect might also be brilliant because they have a character to them. And what I liked about him was years ago, Canon Australia, I think it was, did a thing. And a lot of people heard about this because it kind of went a bit viral, where they gave, I think it was like 5 or 6 photographers,
we
one
spoke
subject.
about this last time. Yeah.
And like what they told one of them, he was an ex-con, another one, he was a self-made millionaire and so on. So the way Phil Sharp, and I say Phil like we're mates, but
good old Phil.
Good old Phil. But the way that he shoots, it feels like he's trying to push so much narrative onto a person's expression and onto the way that he kind of composes. Lots of headroom he uses in sort of situations where I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I love it for the exact reason that I wouldn't do it, is why it's so interesting to me.
But it's nice when you see something that you'd avoid and someone does it and you go, oh,
yeah,
you've made it work.
Exactly.
Which is nice to say everything can work in the right circumstances.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you might be comfortable doing something a certain way, but someone else is comfortable doing it the complete opposite way.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows you both wrong and you're both right.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. His color palette is quite muted. It's quite pastel-y and quite calm, which I also like. I'm not a big fan of big neon colors, and another thing that's to look at my own Sonys with anger. It's another sort of Sony stereotype, is that you have the really over the top color.
I don't know where that came from, because it's more of a Samsung thing where everything's like saturated is always turned up by an extra 10 or 20.
I think it's because Sony's, as a user,
but out of the camera, the colors aren't that high.
No. But what I think it is that Sonys are so easy to use.
Right.
That a lot of people are getting a result out of them before they know their ass from their elbow photographically.
Which is nuts, because they're not the cheapest entry point for camera.
No, but they're not the most expensive either. So they're not in the worst position.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is, I've talked about this before when I've taught about editing. Basically, anything you really do in Photoshop or Lightroom, take back 15%.
Yeah.
Because you're probably pushing it.
Yeah.
And you see it a lot, like 2 years down the line, you look at your old photos and you're like, fucking hell, I really was.
Well, sometimes I'll do that. I'll like be halfway or close to finishing a photograph and I'll stop, save it, and then work on another one, and then go back and go, actually, I have taken that too far.
Yeah.
Or you look back to where you started, and I do that on my first layer as the default, and go, oh, no, that skin shouldn't look that color.
No.
And that's not actually green anymore. It looks like it's radioactive.
Yeah, it looks like someone's put like a nice Chernobyl film over the top of my image. No, it's. I think it's just a Sony thing. I do. I think it's like how cars in San Francisco and that, like blah blah blah. Yeah. I think Sonys have a bit of a culture. I think it's not hard to find if you follow any photography pages and you just go and look on your Explore on Instagram. You can usually find some dickhead holding a Sony in their hand, taking a picture of it with another Sony.
Yeah,
or they're vaping out the back of a purge mask or something. It's just all the same shit over and over again. It's a very Sony thing to do. But no, his colors are really muted. His images are very understated. I've got a real thing for substance over flash. Like it really feels like he's connected to the subject. I feel a lot when I see his images, and they look slightly cinematic.
Yeah. Which
is a very, very loose term that gets thrown around a lot. But when you see, so from frame of reference, if you talked earlier about watching Joker. Yeah. I think Joker's beautifully filmed. I think there's some amazing composition, but I really, really like the use of how much of the person appears in the frame.
Yep.
So there'll be lots of headroom for people that are being made to feel small, or they are being overwhelmed by their environment. There's actually a motivation to the decisions being made. He seems like he's motivated by every decision in his image. I really find it a turn off intellectually when I look at someone's images and it feels like they haven't made all the decisions. Some of the decisions have made them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they've gone that because it's kind of working. I'll just roll with this.
Yeah,
like,
I saw that one guy do this thing, so I'll just do that thing.
Yeah, they've not considered their work enough.
And he's incredibly well thought out and definitely worth a follow on Instagram especially. So that's Phil Sharp. To double barrel here so that you can finish off. My second one of this and my final selection is my favorite photographer, and the best photographer in the world, in my opinion. And there's a heavy tangent coming, but he's a wedding photographer based in England. I have met him. I went on his workshop. That's going to be the tangent. He is a street photographer as well, and he is fantastic with timing on his street photography. He picks very, very, very clever moments, which I think shows an incredible capacity for patience and for foresight.
Yeah.
It's one thing to wait for something to happen. It's another thing to know it's going to.
Yes.
So I think he has both of those in spades. His use of not very wide lenses, but wider than a lot of people would maybe use in certain scenarios, is fantastic, because one thing I think that gets, going back to the men being technical, women being about people, one thing that I think gets lost a lot with photographers, predominantly the men, is that there is more than one way to think about the effects of something.
Yeah.
So we talk about compression or flattering features and so on when it comes to portrait lenses. One thing I do say constantly about your lens choice should be context. Context should really be your driving force.
Yeah.
How much of the scene is needed for the context of what you're doing. And he's fantastic at shooting with like a 24 or a 35 in a lot of situations where people would probably switch to an 85 or longer.
Yeah.
And really getting into the scene, but at the same time bringing so much context to it and so much interest. His wedding photography is my standard. Like, that's where I have to reach. Otherwise, I've been a failure. That's my bottom line. I absolutely idolize this guy. I think he's incredible. So Ross Harvey, if I haven't said his name already, which I think I did. So Ross Harvey, I found him years ago on a really terrible photography forum full of trolls, and he was sharing work on there and then just ignoring everybody, which is great because I got to see the work, and I also got to laugh at the reactions of people that obviously couldn't do it if they tried, but that they're online, they're behind the keyboard, they're tough. He shoots a lot of weddings now that are completely unattainable. And it's hard to even get a context on how I could do my version of what he's doing. He shot, so do you remember a few years ago, there was a big newspaper story about a wedding at Blenheim Palace where it was like an African oil baroness's son getting married, and she'd spent like stupid money, like 50,000 on a cake and 250,000 on flowers, and it was nuts. If you go on his website, you can see the pictures from that wedding. He had to sign a 1-year NDA, so he couldn't post them straight away. Robin Thicke did the first dance, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, like it's nuts. The amount of money being spent, and the cake is like the size of the flat that I live in, and it's completely
different world.
You have people in those photos, and you still don't understand the scale.
Yeah.
That's how crazy they are. But his ability to make everything not only beautiful, but also show so much of the personality of everybody that's photographed. He does amazing things with mirrors where he'll shoot. There's a really cool set he did with a couple, I think it was in Austria, and they were going to a wedding, and they had some pictures with a camper van, and he's got a picture where there's one person visible in a mirror, another person through the windscreen, another person to the right of it, and they're all like massively far apart. I mean, they are taking social distancing to a new level, but in one frame, he's got them all interacting with each other, but also distant. It's like a mix of incredibly clever, but still personable. Yeah. I would just gush for hours if I was to talk about his work. I would never shut up. The tangent is that I attended one of his workshops.
Yeah.
And I've only attended 2 people's workshops ever. One is English Photo Works. I wrote a blog about that recently.
Yeah.
And he's been on the podcast a couple of times. I think David's a lovely guy. I've just done another blog discussing his online masterclass. The first was Ross Harvey, and it cost me £500.
Yeah.
When I did not have money because I was sort of starting my business at that point, and I was like, "Fuck it, it's my chance."
Yeah.
And it was not what I expected. About halfway through the morning, there was a lot more people there than I believed there was supposed to be.
Right.
So he made a lot of money.
How many people are you talking?
Between 35 and 45.
For a fucking workshop?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Well, it gets worse.
I mean, the workshops I've been on, once you get above 10 people, you struggle just to have, one-to-one and chat and talk people through
to even
issues.
ask one question.
Yeah. It's like being in class at school. You just get forgotten about.
So about halfway through the morning, he started to talk about the double slit theory, which is to do this in as Kris Karl way as possible, as shorthand as possible. Basically, it's about the idea that the universe is aware of us observing it.
Okay.
And that the universe behaves differently when it knows we're watching it. And that if you believe something will happen, you can make it happen with your mind. And therefore you can control the universe.
Right. You send that positive reinforcement message out and the universe will listen and throw it back at you.
Yeah. And obviously, without wanting to be too much of a pessimist here, it kind of falls flat the second you start thinking about like cancer or things that happen to babies.
Coronavirus.
It all falls to pieces really when you start actually thinking about things outside of your own bubble. And you know what? If that's what helps him get his photos, then power to him.
Yeah.
It won't work for me. And I was sat there for a good hour, just like, please talk about photography.
Yeah.
He showed like a kid's school video about the double slit theory. And I was just like, please, £500, talk about cameras or photography. I didn't come here for a philosophy
lesson.
Yeah, I'm married to a woman who's done a master's in psychology. I could go through all of this separately. Can we just do the photography stuff? Talk about how you get the couple shots that you get. Talk about, and he did eventually talk about some photographic stuff, but definitely not as much as I was hoping for. And then most of it was about pricing because it was in that real, what I would call the Sue Bryce heyday of people just constantly talking about money. Right. How you can make money from your photography, how you can make more money from your, how you can double your income.
But really you wanted to get to know the substance of how he goes about creating his work.
Yeah, because I at the end of the day, if, and it's not a far off shout, if I'm not a wedding photographer for the rest of my life, I'll probably still do it for free because I enjoy my job so much.
Yeah.
That's the honest truth. Yeah, so his workshop really let me down. I'm not going to lie.
Have you seen him since or like on a one-to-one basis?
No, he's about to launch a new website, which I'm very excited about.
Okay.
And his work has completely disappeared. Like he just doesn't do anything now, which is really upsetting for me because he could release...
What, as in he's not publishing his work?
I can't find it anywhere. Nothing new on his website for over a year.
Wow. Maybe he just wants to rebrand himself.
Well, I know he charges about £15,000 for a wedding. So I imagine he probably does 3 and then spends the rest of the year having good times.
Yeah.
I don't think he's someone that's shooting every weekend. But he does a lot of stuff in Lake Como, which looks really cool. I just think he's the best photographer in the world. His ability to kind of combine so many different elements, which I think wedding photography is the hardest form in the sense because there's no such thing. You have to be all the different types of photographer.
Yeah.
And he seems to be strong in all of them. So that's my top pick. And
that's a good list.
Yeah.
I'll have to check him out.
So now who's your unpronounceable last pick?
Jason Boland.
Oh, that's very good. Okay, that's fine.
He is he's a photographer that works in the film business. So he's worked on lots of films, helping with cinematography and a lot of just still shots for the production. He's a Nikon user, so yay for me. He's worked on Matrix, Mad Max, his stuff on that's stunning. That's a great film anyway. I just like the way he captures the atmosphere and really iconic shots.
Like BTS stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's just, we both like films and the stuff he's captured it's just brilliant. It's that other angle. And I know some of the stuff he's done is not when the camera's rolling. It's when like people are maybe getting out of costume and people are being taking on and off makeup. But the way he's captured that.
It's nice though. It's nice to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah. There's still emotion there and there's something so dramatic and I just love it.
I think there's a lot of mystery about how films are made to the general public. Even if you think you know a lot.
Yeah. But it's something about that behind the scenes sort of image that makes it already interesting just knowing this is behind the scenes.
Well, we both absolutely loved 1917.
Oh, it's a brilliant film.
And you walk out the cinema and the first thing you want to do is talk to someone about it.
Yes.
Right? There's like you want to build a community of people that agree with you about how amazing something was when you loved it.
Yes.
And I think that seeing like BTS stuff is an extension of that. It makes you feel more connected to a piece of art that you enjoyed.
Yeah.
How did you find him?
Instagram.
Okay.
Instagram. It's nuts. So he's worked on The Matrix, Mad Max Fury Road. I think he's worked on the recent Mulan Disney remake. So he's worked on big films.
That looks pretty hefty, that does. I'm not a big fan of these stupid remakes, but that one looks like it's going to be...
The production value is nuts, right?
Yeah, it actually... Well, because it hasn't also got like expressionless lions trying to have a conversation, it might actually be quite interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I think he worked on Batman vs Superman. I'm just trying to double check.
That's a shame.
Hey, it wasn't that bad.
No, it was bad. Martha!
Yeah, the execution wasn't great.
No, it was one of those things where when you were a kid and you made something and your mum didn't know what it was, but she's like, oh, it's great, thanks. That's what I think Batman vs Superman was people that had to like it because they were fans of that general sort of thing, going, oh, it's nice.
I walked out of when it was okay.
Yeah,
that's how I felt. There's good parts in it. I thought Warner Brothers screwed over Zack
I tried
Snyder.
to watch it on a plane. I turned it off after about 3 minutes because Zack Snyder's incessant idea, or that genre's incessant idea of using slow-mo.
Right.
It just, I was like, could be done with half the film.
I do like Zack Snyder's directing style. I think Watchmen's brilliant.
Right.
And just so well presented.
Are you a big fan of the Snyder cut? Are you?
I want to see it. Yeah,
you're a guy pushing for the. You're the hashtagger that's.
Yeah, it's just me.
Right. It's like 3.5, 4 hours long. It feels like that might be a bit much.
Yeah. There's nothing else to do at the moment, is there? Can't go outside.
Do you ever follow the YouTube channel Folding Ideas?
No.
So he's a guy who I'm pretty sure works in the film industry, but he's like frustratingly smart.
Right.
He did a video called Ludonarrative Dissonance, and I watched the entire video, and then I was like, what? I had to go back and watch the entire, and then I got it. But like the whole first go was almost like putting butter on the pan to get me ready to understand the information to then go at it again. But he talked about he did a really good video recently about the Snyder Cut, and he said, I don't think people realize what it is. It's not a film. It's got lots of CGI placement and ideas.
Yeah.
That none of it's finished. So there'll be a film in there, but in some scenes, a character is going to be a stick figure moving through a computer generated idea so that you get the general gist of what was supposed to be going on.
Yeah.
Because they have not poured the money in to finish it.
Well, that's the thing. That's all the rumors around. I mean, don't know if Zack Snyder's paid for it himself to have it done, but then has he really forked out millions for CGI? You don't know. But the way Warner Brothers has handled those films is ridiculous. You have the same argument about how Disney have handled Star Wars with the constant, like Rogue One. There's like 2 films in there. You look at the first set of trailers, which is all dark, gritty war film, and then the next it's all a bit more lighthearted and jokey like Marvel because actually we're Disney. We don't want anything too graphic. And it's a shame when that happens. And what I like with Jason Boland's work is it's still capturing, how to put it, the atmosphere or the vision behind the scenes from films that have been completed. And I don't know, it's cool because it's a film. So it's going to look great anyway because you've got this great sets and production value just there in front of you, in front of your glass to capture. But he's still drawing it in aesthetic pleasing way and those emotions.
I think also as well when you have a celebrity, so chances are there's a celebrity in these pictures. He'll either be the director or it'll be one of the actors or actors, whatever.
Some of the stuff is just extras, I should point out, on set.
Right.
And he's still going, oh, look at that shot from Mad Max. You know.
Well, I mentioned Nico Tavanese earlier, who does similar things. He was on Joker and The Irishman and whatnot. And one of the things with him, it made me realize, and I've talked about it a little bit, is when there's a celebrity or someone you recognize in a photo, you can forgive a lot with the photo. Yeah,
because we're attracted to things we're more familiar with.
Right.
So if you're familiar
and I think that's Terry Richardson's
like
entire career, was taking really shit photos of people you've already heard of. So you were like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll give him a pass.
Who's Kris, sorry?
Terry Richardson.
Right, yeah.
So he's the photographic Weinstein, it would appear.
Yes, yeah.
But his sort of incredibly not particularly thoroughly thought out photographic career has held up strongly by the fact that you probably recognize most of the people in his photos.
Yeah.
While we're in the ballpark of films, and we've got a little bit, we'll end this with some film recommendations, I think, because obviously people are on lockdown, people have got a lot of time on their hands, people are working from home, inverted commas. So we both loved 1917. That's going to be out to be streamed very soon. I would recommend every person on earth watches that.
Yeah.
What else have you watched lately that you've been a big fan of, or what are some of your favorite films?
Well, you mentioned Joker. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah. I hate superhero films.
I know. I think out of films, we've got very similar tastes, but we just clash over superheroes. But I thought Joker, the way it's portrayed, was just how it's presented. It's stunning. Like the colours, the lighting.
Score.
Yeah, score's really good. I've got the soundtrack at home. It's so eerie but beautiful.
Yeah. I've never walked out of a cinema ever, and I've been, I'm a musician. I've never walked out of a cinema like fawning over the score of a film. It can be great, and I would just be like, yeah, it was great.
I have a few times. I remember as a kid seeing Lord of the Rings and just being blown away by that. I remember thinking that music was amazing. Yeah. It was so fantasy style and for like that medieval fantasy, which didn't really hit mainstream sound, I would say, until Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Yeah, Joker's a good one. Have a little think. You list some.
I mean, if I go quickly to my...
See, it's hard when you put on the spot.
No. So the problem I have is I'm a big horror fan, and basically everyone thinks they're above horror films. So I don't recommend them, generally speaking, because people... there's two types of people. They either say that horror film didn't scare me, which to me isn't the point of a horror film.
No.
Horror films can be about dread. It can be about almost flipping fear of mortality on its head and it being funny.
Yeah.
There's loads of use for horror, but people always seem to scale it on either all horror films are bad or how scared they were.
See, my gripe with horror films, or the type of horror films I don't like, are the ones where they're just trying to go for the shock value.
Yes.
Or blood and gore. I'm like, no. Yes. Like my favorite horror films, for example, is the first Saw film.
Yeah.
Because you like, for those that haven't seen it, it's two guys who are stuck in a room and they've got to kill either one of them, the other one, or one's got to kill themselves to get out.
Yeah.
And you like both the characters and you want them to escape.
And and the film is about you learning about them.
Yes.
So there's a journey. It's not just
where the rest of them.
Wouldn't it be weird if a guy got hit with a hammer?
Yeah. And it's like so they've been put in a place by a guy called Jigsaw who's saying, look, you've made a poor choice and now you're going to learn from it in this incredibly extreme scenario.
Yeah.
And they're not bad people. You like them and you think, because we're all flawed creatures in some shape or form.
Yeah.
But the rest of the films, you're like, it's just full of shit. You're like, just die. I couldn't care less about you. The first Saw film.
And the morality as films went on started to make that. Like there was one film where a guy gets killed because he's a smoker. And it's like, that feels...
It's a bit like, really?
Yeah, I think we're just...
Have you seen Room 1408?
Yes.
I quite like
that.
That's
Stephen King. It's like a perfect example of what he does best, which is hopelessness.
Yeah.
Like no matter how much you think it's going to turn out well.
Yeah.
It's like the ending to The Mist, not the TV series, but the ending to The Mist is a guy kills his son. So his son doesn't have to go through the hell of what's waiting for them.
Yeah.
And literally seconds after he kills his son, everything goes back to normal. And he's like, oh, I didn't have to kill my son.
Yeah.
Like it's that horrible hopelessness is what he's great at.
Yeah.
As far as stuff I've watched lately, I mean, on just before the weekend, me and Jamila watched Shape of Water, which we'd put off for quite a while.
Oh, Totoro.
Yeah. And that is stunning. Beautiful film. Very bizarre in places.
Yeah.
But a very, very cool film. Beautiful story. Very well acted. And the cars in it are beautiful. And Drive's brilliant.
Yes,
I have to say.
That's a great soundtrack as well.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And really well used.
Like, yeah.
It's a bit in your face, I think, the soundtrack, but...
Oh, I loved it.
But I like that it's in your face because the film isn't. The film is really... I think it's really interestingly paced.
Yeah.
Like,
I might watch that when I get in, actually. That's such a good film.
I didn't find myself bored at any point, and the low points felt bigger than the high points. The action scenes aren't the bits I remember from the film.
It's the way he handles the calmness. He's just so calm and placid.
Barely speaks. Yeah. He's just, you know what? For years, I could not stand him.
Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, because I got the impression he was like the Backstreet Boys of actors. Like he was there for his looks.
Yeah.
But he's not. He's actually just a phenomenally talented actor.
Yeah.
And he takes some really good roles.
Yeah.
And I mean, Christ, to go back through some, I mean, Enemy, Jake Gyllenhaal is brilliant. Very weird. Takes, you can't watch it while you're doing something else.
Yeah.
But it's definitely worth watching. Not if you don't like spiders. That's one thing I would say. And the two films that have really hit me hard in the last couple months where I've really gone through, from a photographic sense, The Lighthouse.
That's brilliant.
It is jaw-droppingly brilliant. You have to get
it threw me because it's in the old square format.
Yes, it's 1 by 1. Yeah,
yeah. When I was watching it, I was like, "Is something wrong? Is there something wrong?"
Yeah, yeah. And it would have been amazing to see it shot widescreen because of the poster for it is widescreen and it's beautiful.
Yeah,
and the scenery is stunning. There's some genuinely some of the hardest laughs I've ever had at the cinema was to that film when he kills the seagull. I laughed my tits off. That was so well. The fact that it's the guy from Twilight irritates me no end, but he was brilliant in there. Willem Dafoe is beyond brilliant in there.
Willem Dafoe is one of the best actors, I think.
Mostly for Green Goblin, I'm sure you'd agree. And then a film I would recommend to anybody that's terrified of death or I think this is a good time to watch it. There's a film called A Ghost Story.
Right.
Which is Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara, and I don't want to ruin it.
Okay.
But it's very artistic and it's very emotional.
Right.
Very little dialogue in it.
Okay.
But I just thought it was stunning. And I had that in my collection to watch.
Ghost Story.
It's called A Ghost Story.
A Ghost Story. Okay.
And I had it in my collection to watch for over a year, and I was scared to watch it not because it's a ghost story, but because I knew emotion. Yeah, but it wasn't because of like anything stupid like that. But I knew what it was going to do emotionally, and I watched it on my own, and I just sat there for like an hour afterwards. It hits you really hard. It's a stunning film.
Okay.
It goes a few places you don't really expect out of nowhere. So don't look down and then look up because all of a sudden you'll be like, whoa.
So pay attention.
Yeah, it's brilliantly acted.
Well, I've got two. Okay, so I've got 4 films, but 2 are paired together in categories. And I know the first 2 I think you'd like. You've probably seen them. The Big Short.
Years ago.
Yeah, that's really good. All about the credit crash that happened in 2008, and it's so well done, and it's very accurate, and it's really entertaining. And one I watched a few weeks ago on Amazon Prime is The Report, Adam Driver, and that's all about the torturing techniques that the CIA were using of waterboarding on prisoners of war from Iraq to get intelligence.
Yeah,
again, it's all based on the true story, and there's a write-up about the film with how accurate it was. And that's just really fascinating as a point of history and politics.
Yeah.
And it's just really fascinating. And again, I was on the edge of my seat going, this is really, because you're taking something that's quite a boring topic, but actually make it really interesting to keep up with, where The Big Short did the same, but they made it comical. The Report isn't comical. It's quite a straight film.
Right.
And the other 2 are just more pick-me-up films. Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Yeah. I quite like. And there's some great photography in that, or cinematography in that. There's a line I really like that, what's his name? Sean Penn was it Madonna he was married to? I think so. But he's there as a photographer. And Walter, have you seen the film?
No.
So Walter,
if I have, I don't remember.
Walter Mitty works for Life magazine.
Right.
And you find out at the start of the film, the magazine's going online, digital only. And Sean Penn's character is the photographer, and he sends the film to Walter to develop, and he can't find the film.
Right.
So he's going off on a mission, who's a bit of an introvert, to go find Sean Penn's photographer character. And there's a great bit where Sean's capturing this snow leopard out in the wild, and he just says, because a character says to him, "Hey, what you didn't take the photo. He goes, no, sometimes it's good to just enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit philosophical, but I think it's very true. And you must have this at weddings where you think if people just put their phones away, you enjoy the moment. There's other people there to capture it.
Yeah.
And a film similar to that vein is Hector and the Search for Happiness. It's just a great Simon Pegg film, which I think he co-wrote.
Oh, okay.
It's all about finding yourself with what you want in life. And it's just quite funny.
So let's finish with one each. Best cinematography you've ever seen in a film. I have mine, so I can go first if you'd like.
Yeah, go on.
So for me, it's Revenant. I think in terms of framing and composition and the movement, the fluidity of it, I've never seen anything like it. The closest I've seen to it is 1917, but I don't think it matches it. One of the things about Revenant is the wideness that it's shot with. And when people are close, they feel like they're sat on your lap. So you feel constantly
and the all natural light as well. It's stunning. I'll probably say Inception.
Okay. So basically anything with DiCaprio.
No, I love Nolan North as a director.
Yeah.
I think Inception's really just, again, there's some CGI in that, but it looks just so believable. And it's one of the films I'll still watch, and it does blow my mind.
Well, I remember watching the trailer for that when the building starts to turn and
it collapses in on itself.
Yeah, and I think the first time I watched the trailer, I was like, "What the fuck is happening?" Like it's like being on drugs for the first time. It's incredible. Well, this has been amazing.
Oh, thank you, Kris.
Thank you so much for coming in.
It's all right.
And before we go, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to people that have been following the podcast for the last little while. I'm trying to get as many episodes up as I can to get us through this sort of self-containing, self-isolating, quarantining period. I'm aware things are quite boring at the moment in terms of not being able to get out and shoot. So I'm attempting to put as much stuff out as possible to help people get through that rut. Over on my blog at kriskarl.com/blog, I will be releasing hopefully daily blogs of recommendations on photographers, YouTube channels, mini-series and so on, for ideas for things for you guys to watch and sort of view and things to pass the time. And if you guys have anything that you want to sort of share in the comments on YouTube or anything like that, it's really appreciated. We've really got to look out for each other at the moment and give ourselves a lot to keep our minds preoccupied from what's going on. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you.